You finish a slice of cake, maybe a couple of cookies, something loaded with sugar. And a few minutes later you notice it. Your hands feel cold. Maybe your feet too. You're indoors, nothing's changed in the room, but your body suddenly feels like someone turned the thermostat down. Most people brush it off. Maybe blame the air conditioning, maybe just forget about it entirely. But here's the thing, that cold feeling isn't random and it isn't in your head. Something measurable is happening inside your blood vessels right after sugar hits your system, and it's a lot stranger than people realize. This is the story of what sugar actually does to your circulation, why your body treats a candy bar like a small emergency, and why the sugar rush you've heard about is really the opposite of what's happening under the surface. To understand this, you first need to understand what your body is trying to do every time you eat something sweet. Because the second sugar enters your bloodstream, your body doesn't just casually absorb it. It reacts. Blood sugar, glucose, is one of the most tightly regulated substances in your entire body. Too little, and your brain starts shutting down non-essential functions. Too much, and your blood becomes thick, sluggish, and eventually toxic to your organs. So when a spike of glucose floods in, your body doesn't sit back and wait. It responds immediately, aggressively, and one of the very first things that happens is a chain reaction inside your blood vessels themselves. Here's where the cold comes in. Your pancreas detects that spike and releases a surge of insulin, the hormone responsible for shuttling glucose out of your blood and into your cells. That part most people already know. What most people don't know is that insulin doesn't just manage sugar. It also acts directly on the walls of your blood vessels, and depending on how much insulin gets released and how your body responds, it can cause those vessels to do two very different things. In a healthy, calibrated response, insulin actually widens blood vessels slightly, improving blood flow, but after a large, fast sugar spike, the kind you get from a sugary snack on an empty stomach, the body can overcorrect. And that overcorrection often shows up as vasoconstriction. Your blood vessels, particularly the small ones near the surface of your skin, in your fingers, your toes, your ears, begin to narrow. And that narrowing is the whole story. Your body is essentially rerouting blood flow, pulling it away from your extremities and prioritizing your core, your organs, the parts of you that matter most for survival. It's the same basic instinct your body uses in the cold, except this time it's not triggered by the temperature outside. It's triggered by chemistry happening inside you. Less blood reaching your hands and feet means less heat reaching your hands and feet. And heat is what those areas depend on entirely, because unlike your core, your fingers and toes don't generate much warmth on their own. They rely almost completely on blood flow to stay warm. Cut that flow down, even slightly, and the temperature drop is immediate and noticeable. This is where the crash comes in, and it's the part almost nobody connects to the cold feeling. That spike of insulin doesn't just narrow your blood vessels. It also works so efficiently at clearing sugar from your blood that it frequently overshoots. Your blood sugar rises fast, insulin floods in to bring it back down, and often it brings it down past the baseline into a mild dip. Doctors call this reactive hypoglycemia. And it typically hits somewhere between 30 minutes and 2 hours after a sugar-heavy meal. And your body treats a blood sugar dip as a genuine threat, not a minor inconvenience. Low blood sugar means your brain, which runs almost entirely on glucose, is at risk of losing its primary fuel source. So your body activates a stress response. It releases adrenaline and cortisol, the same hormones involved in a fight or flight reaction. And adrenaline does something very specific to your circulation. It constricts blood vessels even further, on top of what the insulin has already done. This is the body's emergency logic. When resources are scarce, or when the system senses a threat, it pulls blood toward vital organs and away from the periphery. It's the exact same mechanism that makes your hands go cold when you're frightened or under sudden stress. Sugar crashes trigger a milder, slower version of that same stress signal, which means the cold hands you feel after a candy bar and the cold hands you feel during a moment of panic are, physiologically, closer to the same event than you'd expect. Now, this doesn't happen identically to everyone, and that matters. People with insulin resistance a condition where cells respond less efficiently to insulin, tend to release even larger amounts of it to compensate. More insulin circulating means a stronger vasoconstriction response, and often a sharper crash afterward. This is part of why people in the early stages of type 2 diabetes, or those with prediabetes, frequently report feeling unusually cold, particularly in their hands and feet hours after eating. It isn't a separate symptom happening by coincidence, it's a direct downstream effect of the same glucose and insulin swings, just amplified. And it's one of the reasons doctors sometimes ask about temperature sensitivity in patients being screened for blood sugar issues, because the circulatory story and the metabolic story are the same story. There's also a second, quieter mechanism working in parallel, and it's one most explanations skip entirely. Digestion itself is expensive. Breaking down and processing a large intake of sugar and food requires blood flow, specifically toward your digestive organs. Your body temporarily reallocates circulation toward your gut to support that process, which means, again, less blood available for your extremities. This effect exists after any large meal, not just sugary ones, which is part of why people sometimes feel a little cold or sluggish after any big lunch. But sugar accelerates and intensifies the effect because of how quickly it forces the insulin response, stacking a digestive blood shift on top of a hormonal one. So by the time you're sitting there, 30 or 60 minutes after dessert, wondering why your hands feel like you just walked in from outside, there are actually 3 separate mechanisms working together. Insulin-driven vasoconstriction pulling blood away from your skin, a glucose dip, triggering an adrenaline response that constricts vessels even further, and digestion itself temporarily prioritizing blood flow toward your gut over your extremities. None of these are dangerous on their own for a healthy person. This is a normal, self-correcting process. Your blood sugar stabilizes, your vessels widen back out, and within an hour or two, you're back to your baseline temperature without ever realizing anything happened. But here's what's genuinely interesting. This response gets more pronounced the emptier your stomach is beforehand, and the more refined the sugar is. A sugary drink or candy on an empty stomach produces a much sharper glucose spike, and therefore a much sharper insulin response than the same amount of sugar eaten alongside protein, fat, or fiber. Those macronutrients slow the rate at which glucose enters your bloodstream, which blunts the whole cascade. This is part of why nutritionists frequently recommend pairing sweets with something like nuts or protein. It's not just about blood sugar control in the abstract, it's about avoiding this exact chain reaction, insulin surge, vasoconstriction, crash, adrenaline, more vasoconstriction that a lot of people are experiencing without ever knowing why. And this connects back to something people call the sugar rush, a term almost everyone uses but almost nobody uses correctly. The commonly held idea is that sugar makes you hyper, energized, jittery. But that framing has it backwards. What people are usually describing isn't the sugar itself, it's the adrenaline response kicking in during the crash that follows the sugar. The jitteriness, the sudden alertness, even the cold hands, they're symptoms of your body reacting to a dip, not symptoms of the sugar providing energy. In other words, the part of the experience people associate most with sugar's effects is actually your body's stress response to sugar's aftermath. So the next time you eat something sweet and notice your hands or feet turning cold, 20 minutes later, you're not imagining it, and it's not the room. Your pancreas released a wave of insulin. Your blood vessels near your skin narrowed in response. Your blood sugar likely dipped below where it started. And your body answered that dip with a small, adrenaline-driven stress reaction that tightened those vessels even further, all while extra blood was already being funneled toward digestion. 3 systems, 1 outcome, cold hands from a warm dessert. It's not sweet blood making you cold, it's your circulatory system quietly rerouting itself in real time, doing exactly what it's built to do, and doing it so well that most people never even notice it's happening.